Welcome to EduTap and welcome to today's session. So first of all, I hope I'm clearly audible and the screen is visible. And today we are going to discuss the 16th Finance Commission. Okay, the recommendations have been provided by the 16th Finance Commission, and today we will discuss the key takeaways from the 16th Finance Commission, which is very important from your RBI Grade B as well as from your SEBI Grade A point of view. Okay, so today we are going to discuss the recommendations and the key takeaways of the 16th Finance Commission, and today you will see various data that is very important from the examination perspective, as well as we will understand the concept behind the 16th Finance Commission and various terminologies that have been shared by this Finance Commission. Okay, so first of all, give me a thumbs up. I hope that everything is fine and you are able to see the screen. I hope that everything is fine. Just give me a thumbs up if there is any. I hope. Okay, I think everything is fine. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so 16th Finance Commission, it is very important from your syllabus point of view, as well as this is very important from the examination point of view. Okay, for RBI Grade B as well as for SEBI Grade A. So 16th Finance Commission, today we are going to have a detailed discussion on the recommendations that is provided by the 16th Finance Commission. So let's get started. And before starting with the session, do subscribe to the YouTube channel of EduTap and do check out the Telegram channel of EduTap, where you will get the PDF of the session. Okay, so the link of the Telegram channel is provided in the description box below, and in the Telegram channel you will get the PDF of the session. Okay, so now let's start with the session, and directly first let's understand about the Finance Commission. So Finance Commission, what is Finance Commission? This is first what we have to understand before going forward with the recommendations and the key takeaways. So Finance Commission, first of all, it is a constitutional body. It is a constitutional body, as the Finance Commission is set according to the Article 280 of the Constitution. This provides for the Finance Commission. Okay, so the Article 280 of the Constitution, it provides for a Finance Commission. It is constituted, now the Finance Commission, it is constituted by the President every 5th year or at such earlier time as the President considers necessary. Okay, so every 5th year or at such earlier time as the President considers necessary, the Finance Commission is constituted. Now the Finance Commission consists of a chairman and 4 other members as appointed by the President. The appointment is again done under the Article 280, because the Article 280 provides for the Finance Commission and for the establishment and constitution of the Finance Commission. Okay, now the recommendations made by the Finance Commission are of an advisory nature only, and therefore they are not binding upon the government. So what we have understood is that the Finance Commission is a constitutional body formed by the President of India to give suggestions on center-state financial relation. So now the Finance Commission is constituted, that we understand. The Finance Commission is constituted as per the Constitution, and it has a chairman and 4 other members. But why the Finance Commission is constituted, that we have to understand. Okay, so Article 280 in Constitution in India, it provides for the Finance Commission for the establishment, for the constitution of the Finance Commission. So now 16th Finance Commission consists of the chairman, Dr. Arvind, as well as the 4 other members are there in the Finance Commission. So as I have told you that there is 1 chairman and there are 4 other members. So here you can see that in the 16th Finance Commission also there is 1 chairman and there are 4 other members. Okay, now what does the Finance Commission do? Why the Finance Commission is constituted? We have understood that under the Constitution, the Finance Commission is constituted and it is constituted by the President. But why is there the need for the Finance Commission? Why there is the need for the Finance Commission? So first of all, see, Finance Commission, if we want to understand that why the Finance Commission is needed, first we have to understand the vertical transfer and the horizontal transfer. That is also known as vertical devolution or horizontal devolution. Okay. Chalo. So vertical devolution, what does this mean? So there are transfers. The central government is the one, that is the union is the one that collects the income tax, that collects the corporation tax, okay, that collects the IGST and such. So you can understand that the central government is collecting the tax, income tax, corporate tax, the major tax. It is collected by the central government. It is collected by the central government. Now the central government has a pool of the tax, Now the income tax, corporate tax, the income, let's say you are living in Bihar, you are living in Jharkhand, you are living in Uttarakhand, you are living in Kerala, you are living in Sikkim, so you are living in different states. But who is taking the income tax? Central government. The corporates are established, the companies are established in different states and different union territories, but who is taking the tax, who is collecting the corporate profit tax? Central government. So central government is the one that is collecting a major chunk of the money. Okay, customs duty, it is collected by the central government. So central government, the union is able to access, it is able to get the major chunk of tax. So that means central government has the most of the power and most of the resources. So how the state governments are going to sustain, the expenditure that they have to do? Law and order, the maintenance of law and order, it is under the state government. The state agriculture agriculture comes under the state government. So state government spends a lot for agriculture, for law and order maintenance. But how the state governments get most of the money? Because yes, they are getting the state GST, and they are also getting a part of the IGST, but still, like the state governments, they are not able to get the income tax or corporate tax. So a solution was found that the Finance Commission will recommend that out of the total pool of tax, or out of the divisible pool of tax, the central government will have to provide a part of the divisible pool of tax to the state government. What does this mean? So remember that the central government is collecting the major taxes. Out of the total tax that is collected by the central government, out of the total tax revenue that is collected by the central government, we deduct the cost of collecting the tax, because there is the cost that the central government bears to collect the tax, to collect the income tax, corporation tax, to collect the different duties and such. The central government is also bearing some cost, okay, the cost for collecting the tax. So that is deducted, as well as the cess and surcharge is deducted. Then what is left? Divisible pool of tax. This is known as divisible pool of tax that the central government is left with. This is also known as net proceeds of tax. So from the total tax revenue that the central government is getting, the central government deducts the cost of collecting the tax, the cess and surcharge, and once we deduct the cost of collecting the tax, once we deduct the cess and surcharge, what is left? Divisible pool of tax is left. Okay, the net proceeds of tax is left. From these net proceeds of tax, the central government has to give a portion to the state governments. Now this is known as vertical transfer or vertical devolution of tax. Is there any confusion? So vertical devolution, that is, these are the transfers of resources from the central government to all the state governments collectively. So central government provides a part of the net proceeds of tax to the state government. Let's say central government is collecting 100 rupees as net proceed of tax. Out of this, let's say 50 rupees or 41 rupees or 40 rupees, like there is some share that has to be provided to the state government. This is recommended by the Finance Commission, that what will be the share that will be shared by the central government to the state government out of the net proceeds of tax. Okay, now what is horizontal transfer? I hope the vertical transfer is clear, that from central government the money will flow to the state government, because central government is collecting the major tax revenue, so that has to be shared with the state government to some extent to maintain the equity. Okay, now what is the horizontal transfer? Now the central government, let's say out of the 100 rupees of the net proceeds of tax, the central government has given state governments total 41 rupees. You can understand this, that this is in lakh crores, 100 lakh crores. From 100 lakh crores, let's say central government has given 41 lakh crores to the state government. Now there are so many of the state governments, there are 28 state governments, amongst which now this money has to be distributed. So how the money will be distributed between Kerala, Sikkim, Goa, Uttarakhand, Jharkhand, and so many of the other states? So how the tax, now how this money will be distributed, that between the states? So the central government has provided the money for the state governments. Now how the money will be distributed amongst the state governments? So there is the horizontal transfer that we are talking about now. So the money that is coming from the central government to the state government, that is vertical transfer. The money that is getting distributed between the state governments, that is horizontal transfer. Any confusion? So once the total share of states is determined, through the vertical transfer, then the horizontal transfer is decided. That is how the money will be distributed amongst the states. So this takes into account various criteria. There are various criteria that have been determined due to according to which the money is distributed amongst the states. Okay, so this is the idea. So vertical devolution, that you can see, this is the division of the total tax revenue. From the total tax revenue, there are the net proceeds that are taken out. So division of the net proceeds between central states and the between the central government and the state governments. Okay, so the vertical devolution, it talks about the division of the net proceeds of tax. It talks about the transfer of the money from the central government to the state government. Now the percentage of the transfer will be decided by the, or will be recommended by the Finance Commission. Horizontal devolution, this talks about the distribution of the state's share of tax revenue amongst different state. So out of the total money that the state governments have got, how the money will be distributed amongst the different states. So that is horizontal transfer. Now coming to the terms of reference. So the 16th Finance Commission, we have understood the vertical devolution and we have understood the horizontal devolution. Now let's discuss that what recommendation, on what lines the 16th Finance Commission had to provide the recommendations. What were the terms of reference for which the recommendations had to be provided by the 16th Finance Commission. So till now we have understood that the Finance Commission, it is a constitutional body. The Finance Commission consists of 1 chairman and 4 other members, and there is the vertical transfer and the horizontal transfers that happen, and the Finance Commission provides the recommendation regarding the vertical transfer and the horizontal transfer. Now let's understand the terms of reference for the 16th Finance Commission particularly. So the Finance Commission had to make the recommendations regarding the following matters. That is, first of all, the distribution between. So it is the Finance Commission that informs that how the net proceeds of taxes will be distributed between the union and the states. That means how much money has to be transferred to the state governments. So the distribution between the union and the states, the distribution between the central government and the state governments of the net proceeds of tax, which are to be or may be divided between them, and the allocation between the states of the respective share of such proceeds. That means the allocation between the states. So basically from the net proceeds of taxes. Now how the net proceeds of taxes is calculated? From the total tax revenue of the central government minus the cost of tax collection, minus the cess and minus the surcharge. So then we come to the net proceeds of taxes. From this net proceeds of taxes, the money has to be distributed between the central government and the state government, and on the recommendation of the Finance Commission, the central government distributes a part to the state government. Okay, so this is vertical transfer that is recommended by the Finance Commission. Finance Commission recommends that the money that the state governments have received collectively, how it will be distributed between the different states. So the Finance Commission provides the recommendations on the basis of which the money is distributed between the states. So this is what is written here, that the distribution between the union and states of the net proceeds of taxes, they are decided or they are recommended by the 16th Finance Commission, and the allocation between the states of the respective share of the proceed, that is also recommended by the Finance Commission. Now another important thing that the Finance Commission recommend is the principle which would govern the grant in aid of the revenues to the states. As you know that the central government provide grants to the state government. Now on what principles the central government will provide the grants to the state governments? Which kind of grants will be provided to the state government? Okay, so this kind of recommendation is also provided by the Finance Commission, the principles which would govern the grant in aid from the central government to the state government, and the sum, that is the amount that will be provided in grants from the central government to the state government. So the principles on which the grants will depend upon from the central government to the state government, as well as the sum of the grant that will be given by the central government to the state government, okay, from the Consolidated Fund of India. Another important thing that is recommended by the Finance Commission is, now try to understand that it is the Finance Commission that recommends the share between the central government and the state government of the net proceeds of taxes. Now there is State Finance Commission. There is State Finance Commission that recommends the share of the receipts between the state government and the local bodies, the rural local bodies and the urban local bodies. Okay, so the Finance Commission it informs about the vertical devolution, and it talks about the, or it recommends about the horizontal devolution. Okay, as well as there is the State Finance Commission. For each and every state there is the State Finance Commission, or for the states there is the State Finance Commission. So State Finance Commission informs that how the money will be distributed between the state government and the local bodies. Okay, so the State Finance Commission recommends that how the resources can be distributed between the state government and the local bodies, so that there is the cooperative federalism that is followed, and each and every layer of the governance is getting the required funds. So central government shares the funds with the state government shares the funds with the local bodies on the recommendation of the Finance Commission. At the country level we have a Finance Commission, and at each state level also there is the State Finance Commission. Okay, now the measures, now the Finance Commission, it also recommends the measures that needed to augment the consolidated fund of a state. So all the states, or the states, they have consolidated fund of state in which they keep their resources, the loans that they are taking, okay, or the receipts that they are getting, the tax receipts that they are getting, the SGST that they are getting, or the money, the grants that they are getting from the government. This goes to the consolidated fund of state. So now the Finance Commission, the Central Finance Commission, basically it measures, it provides, it recommends the measures that can be taken to augment, to boost, or to increase the consolidated fund of state, to supplement the resources that will further go to the panchayats and municipalities in the state. Because if the consolidated fund of state is increasing, that means if there are more resources that the states are able to collect, if there are more taxes or more revenue that the states are able to collect, then the states will also be able to share more with the local bodies. So the Finance Commission provides the measures that need to augment the consolidated fund of state, so that the higher the consolidated fund of state is, the higher the resources that will also go to the panchayats and the municipalities, the rural local bodies and the urban local bodies in the state. On the basis, now how much of the transfer will happen from the state to the local bodies, that is decided by the State Finance Commission. Okay, so let's say State Finance Commission has decided that this particular state will do a transfer from the state government to the local bodies, a transfer of 47%. Okay, so whatever is the total resource in the consolidated fund of state, like whatever the total resources are that is collected by the state government in this particular year, from this the 47% will go to the local bodies. Okay, state governments will have to provide 47% to local bodies. If they are able to increase their revenue, if the state government is able to increase its revenue, if the state government is able to increase its resources, that means from 100, 47% was going to the local body, 47 rupees was going to the local body. Now the state government has increased their receipts to 200. The state government, they are able to collect the taxes in a good manner, they are having more fiscal prudence, and due to which they are able to raise their total revenues to 200. By taking such initiatives, or by like having such kind of infrastructure and having such kind of public sector enterprises that are more profit making now, so they are able to increase their receipts, they are able to increase their revenue, okay, from the tax also. So here 200 rupees is the total revenue, and now they will be able to share 94 rupees with the local bodies. Okay, so that means the same percentage, that is 47%, but if the state governments are increasing their receipts, if the state governments are able to augment their consolidated fund of state, so it can supplement the resources to the panchayats and municipalities of the state. Okay, so this is the basic idea. I hope this is clear. So these are the terms of recommendation. So these are the terms of reference. The Finance Commission had to provide the recommendation how to distribute the net proceeds of tax between union and states, as well as how to allocate between the states, as well as the principles which should govern the grants given to the state governments from the center, as well as the sum to be paid to the states by way of grant, the principal and the sum. The measures, as well as the Finance Commission also recommends the measures need to augment the consolidated fund of state to supplement the resources to the panchayats and municipalities. So there is more fund that releases to the panchayats and municipalities. There are more grants that is released to panchayats and municipalities. There is more, there are more tax devolution that happens to the from the state government to the local bodies. Okay, so this is the idea. Yes. So now the Constitution empowers the Finance Commission to go beyond the core issues of how to divide the taxes vertically between center and state on the one hand and horizontally between the states on the other. That means the Constitution empowers or allows the Finance Commission to make broader recommendation in the interest of sound finance. So these are the basic things that has to be recommended by the Finance Commission, but there are additional recommendations that a Finance Commission can provide for the country, okay, for the sound finance. Now, share of states in central taxes. So now we have understood about the terms of reference. Coming forward to the share of states in the central taxes. So the share of states in the central taxes, that means from the net proceed of taxes, from the central government to the state government, okay, out of the net proceeds of taxes, the recommendation has been provided by the Finance Commission that the share of states in the net proceed of taxes will be 41%. So if the central government is collecting 100 rupees as the net proceeds of taxes, if the central government is having 100 rupees as the net proceed of taxes, then how much will go to the state government? 41 rupees will go to the state governments in totality. So this is what? This is vertical devolution. I hope this is clear. Okay. So central government provides the part of the net proceed of taxes to the different state governments, and this is the vertical devolution that is decided at 41%. Now the same recommendation was provided by the 15th Finance Commission also, that 41% should be shared by central government to the state government. Okay. Next is divisible pool. We have discussed that what is divisible pool, what is the net proceeds of tax. So divisible pool or net proceed of tax is nothing else. It is the total tax that is collected, deducting the cess, surcharge, and deducting the cost of collecting the tax. Okay. So divisible pool is arrived at after excluding the cost of collecting the tax, after excluding the cess and surcharge from the total tax revenue. So from the total tax revenue, when we deduct the cess, surcharge, and we deduct the cost of collecting the tax. So then we come to the divisible pool or net proceeds of tax. Now coming to the we have discussed about the vertical devolution, that central government will share 41% of their net proceed of tax with the state government. Now, how the money will be distributed between the state governments? So for that, this is the formula for the horizontal devolution, that how the money will be distributed between the state governments. So if 41% is provided to the state governments, if 41% of net proceeds of tax is provided to the state government, how it will be divided between the different states? So that depends upon the different criteria. The population criteria has 17.5% of the weight, demographic performance has 10% of the weight, the area has 10% of weight, forest has 10% of weight, the per capita GSDP distance has 42.5% of weight, and contribution to GDP has 10% of weight. So here the highest weight is given to per capita GSDP distance. So what is this per capita GSDP distance? That we have to understand. So first, to understand this per capita GSDP distance, GSDP is what? Gross state domestic product. Okay, like at a country level, we have the gross domestic product, the total value of all the final goods and services produced in the domestic country. So all the production that is happening in the country, the value is seen as the GDP. Now GSDP is the gross state domestic product, that is the total value, the total monetary value of all the final goods and services produced in the state. So its value is taken under the gross state domestic product. Okay. Now think about it. The state that has higher gross state domestic product, the state that has higher per capita means per head. So GSDP is your gross state domestic product divided by the total state population. So that is per capita GSDP. Okay. So per capita GSDP. So GSDP is, let's say, 100 and the total state population is 10. So per capita GSDP will be 10. This is 10 rupees is the per capita per head gross state domestic product. Okay, that is on average each individual, each person in the population is getting rupees 10. So this is the idea of the per capita GSDP, the per capita gross state domestic product, that is the gross state domestic product divided by the total state population. Okay, now a country, think about it, a country that has higher per capita GSDP, that means the state that has higher per capita GSDP, that means the state is affluent, the state is already at a good position because the state has higher per capita GSDP. In comparison to that, there is a state that has very low per capita GSDP. Now think about it, the Finance Commission will provide more funds out of the funds for the state governments. The Finance Commission will provide more funds to a state that has higher per capita GSDP or to a state that has low per capita GSDP, and the per capita GSDP is so low that most of the people are not able to, like, this is the lowest of the per capita GSDP that a state has. So which state will get more funds from this total? So the state that has higher per capita GSDP or the lower? So actually the lower one gets more funds, because to maintain the equity, so that the states that have lower per capita GSDP, they can continue their sustenance, because they have very low per capita GSDP, they have very low money, we can say, and so to maintain the equity, to bring the regional balance, more funds are provided to the state that has low per capita GSDP. So let's understand the idea. So first identify, see what happens under the per capita GSDP distance category. First identify the top 3 states in per capita GSDP. So let's say these are the top 3 states in per capita GSDP. They are earning the highest of the per capita GSDP. They have the highest of the per capita per head GSDP. Okay. Now, Goa and Sikkim are excluded from this calculation. That means they are not taken in the top 3 because Goa and Sikkim are the smallest of the states, and we cannot compare such big states like UP, Bihar and such. We cannot compare these big states with Goa and Sikkim. So Goa and Sikkim, because they are the smallest of the states and they have very less population, so that's why they are excluded from this kind of calculation of top 3 states in per capita GSDP. Okay, so in the top 3 states in per capita GSDP, Goa and Sikkim cannot come because they have less of the population and they have less of the area, though they have good economies. Now take the average. Now these top 3 states excluding the Goa and Sikkim, now we take the average. We take the average per capita GSDP of these top 3 states. This becomes the benchmark. So this is the benchmark against which the other states will be compared, So basically this becomes the benchmark, that is the average per capita GSDP of the top 3 states. Okay, so average per capita, per capita GSDP of the top 3 states, this become the benchmark. So what is the benchmark against which the other states will be compared? So that is the average per capita GSDP of the top 3 states. Okay, of the top 3 states, this becomes the benchmark. Now what will happen, that the fourth state that has the high per capita, GSDP. So this fourth state, now we will compare it against what? The per capita GSDP of the fourth state, we will compare it against the benchmark. So let's say the fourth state is a little lower than the benchmark. So this same distance from the benchmark for the fourth state, this same distance will be provided to Goa and Sikkim also. So take the distance of the fourth highest, per capita GSDP state from this benchmark. Now the same distance will be provided to the Goa and Sikkim also. Okay, for all remaining states we will see the difference. So for Bihar, we will see the difference between the per capita GSDP of Bihar from this benchmark. For UP, we will see the per capita GSDP distance of UP from this benchmark. For Jharkhand, we will see the per capita GSDP distance from this benchmark. So for all the states, for all remaining states, they calculate their actual gap from the benchmark average. Now the lower you are, the more devolution you will get. Okay, from the funds of the that is allocated to the state governments, the lower you are, that means the higher the difference is from the benchmark, the more devolution you will get. So per capita devolution is decided in proportion to this gap. larger gap from the benchmark, the larger the gap is from the benchmark, the larger the gap is in your per capita GSDP from the benchmark, the higher the devolution you will get. The smaller the gap, the lower the devolution you will get. So the smaller the gap, the lower the devolution, the larger the gap, the higher the devolution. Any confusion? So this is the per capita GSDP distance. A benchmark is decided, that is the average of the top 3 states, the average of the top 3 states in the per capita GSDP. This is the benchmark, and against this all the states are compared. Okay, the larger the gap from the benchmark, that means the lower your per capita GSDP is, the higher the devolution will happen, higher the money will be devolved from the state government funds to this particular state, that is poor basically. Smaller the gap, the lower the devolution that will happen from these funds. So this is the idea. So let's say this is the fund that is decided for the state government, that is from central government, from the net proceeds of tax from the central government, 41% is going to the state government. So that means 41 rupees is going to the state government. So this is the total 41 rupees that is going to all the state governments. From this 41 rupees, 42.5% is decided on the basis of the per capita GSDP distance. So 42.5% of the state government funds, it is decided that which state governments will get, how much the state governments will get. So that is decided on the basis of per capita GSDP distance. Any confusion in this per capita GSDP distance? Larger gap from the benchmark, the poorer the states are, the higher the devolution. The smaller the gap, the richer the states are, the lower the devolution. Now coming to the next part, that is population. Now population, population, we are taking the data for population from the 2011 census, from 2011 census. So the larger the population, that you can understand, the larger the population a state has, the more the funds the state requires for meeting its expenditure, for meeting the requirement of the population. So 17.5%, so out of these 17.5% is decided on the basis of the population of a state. Okay, so the higher the population the state has, the more the funds are allocated to that particular state. Now area also you can understand, the larger the area state has, the more the funds that are allocated to that particular state. So 10% is allocated on the basis, 10% is allocated on the basis of area. Okay, the larger the state area is, the larger the funds that are provided to the state. Now coming to the contribution to GSDP and forest. So let's understand. So per capita GSDP distance, income distance, this we have seen. The 16th Finance Commission has defined the income distance that we have seen, the formula we have seen. Now per capita GSDP has been computed. So per capita GSDP is seen for a time period of 2018, 2019, 2023, 24. So just remember that there is a time period that is taken to see the per capita GSDP. Okay. Now this is what we have understood. Now coming to the demographic performance. So population, area. Now coming to the demographic performance. Okay. So demographic performance. See, the 15th Finance Commission introduced this parameter of the demographic performance. Basically, what happens under the demographic performance means population related performance, but we already have the population criteria where we are saying that the more the population, the higher the funds that will be allocated to the state. The higher the population, the more the funds that will be allocated to the state, because more resources, more infrastructure the states need because of the higher population. But what is this demographic performance criteria then? Basically, the demographic performance criteria, it states, like the 15th Finance Commission stated, that the countries that have lower total fertility rate, that means these states, they are focusing on reducing the population. Total fertility rate means that the state is focusing on reducing the population burden, and so these states should be awarded. These states should be awarded because they are reducing their total fertility rate. They are reducing the total fertility rate in the state. So these states should be awarded because they are taking the initiatives, they are taking the measures, they are doing the awareness programs to reduce the total fertility rate, to reduce the population burden. Okay. Now the 16th Finance Commission stated that what is happening now, the benefits from reducing the population, this is being overshadowed by the risk of the aging population. This we have seen in the state finance report that by 2036, like there was the data that was shown that by 2036 a huge part of the population, or all the states, they will have the aging population. So this is becoming a problem, that the risk of aging population is more than the benefit of decreasing the population growth. Yes, if we control the population, that is beneficial, but the risk of aging population increases if we try to control the population haphazardly. The risk of aging population we have seen in Europe, Japan, China. There is the risk of rising. There is the risk of aging population. Okay, so now the 16th Finance Commission is saying that we cannot take the risk of aging population, so we should shift away from this demographic performance. But then the 16th Finance Commission thought that if we suddenly shift away from this demographic performance criteria, where the states are awarded on the basis of the steps that they have taken to reduce the population, now we don't want to focus on reducing the population as much, because there is the risk of aging population that we have in front of us now. So 16th Finance Commission said that we cannot take any decision haphazardly and in a very rapid manner. So the 16th Finance Commission has decreased the percentage of the demographic performance. Here you can see. So basically, the higher the population, the more funds you are going to get. The percentage has been increased for the population. So the higher the population, the better the funds the state is going to get, the more the funds the state is going to get. And the demographic performance, that means if you are reducing your population growth, then yes, you are going to get the benefit, but the percentage, like for demographic performance, the percentage is 10% only. Okay, that has been reduced from the previous Finance Commission. So this is the idea. Demographic performance basically means that the 15th Finance Commission, it introduced this parameter to award the states for controlling population on the basis of total fertility rate. So the lower the total fertility rate in a state is, the better the award that was given, or the higher the award that was given to the state. Now it is said that we will continue with this demographic performance criteria, but instead of taking the total fertility rate, we will take the population growth, because total fertility rate is a derived kind of variable, rather than population growth is directly seen, okay, directly calculated from the census of 2011. So rather than taking the total fertility rate, we will take the population growth that is directly achievable from the census data. Because total fertility rate has to be calculated, it is a derived variable, while the population growth is directly calculated. Okay, so population growth, it is said that the states with lower population growth, will get, because demographic performance is still a criteria, so the states with lower population growth will get more award. Okay, so this is the idea, that before the demographic performance was seen on the basis of total fertility rate. Lower the total fertility rate, higher the award the state will be getting. Now it is said that demographic performance will continue, okay, because we cannot haphazardly remove this demographic performance criteria. We cannot rapidly take such a big step. So this demographic performance will continue, but rather than taking into account the total fertility rate that is derived, that is calculated. So rather than taking the total fertility rate, we will directly take the population growth that can be seen through the census data directly. Okay, so population growth, the lower the population growth is, lower total fertility rate basically shows the lower population growth. Okay, so lower the population growth, higher the award. Lower the population growth in your state, higher the award you will be getting. But the demographic performance before had the percentage 12.5%. Now the demographic performance percentage or the weight has been reduced to 10%. So you can understand that the 16th Finance Commission, understanding that we can have an aging population, and the aging population has more risk. The risk of aging population is higher than the benefit of controlling the population right now. We cannot have the aging population right now, because India is still in the developing phase. In such a developing phase, if we get the aging population, that will be a huge burden on the country, and the growth will nearly reduce to a huge level. So we cannot have this risk of aging population. That's why the demographic performance weight has been reduced from 12.5% to 10%. 16th Finance Commission was discussing to stop this demographic performance criteria, but because there will be a massive change suddenly that will come, so the 16th Finance Commission decided to slowly reduce the weight, and later on it will be removed. Okay, so this is decided by the 16th Finance Commission. Understanding the risk of the aging population, that is also discussed in the State Finance report that we have discussed previously. Okay, so you can understand income distance, 42.5% of the weight. Population, the higher the population your state has, the more the funds you will get, because to maintain the higher population, the states need more funds. So its weight has been increased to 17.5%. Slowly promoting higher population, that is also having good infrastructure, good funds. Okay, now demographic performance, that is the award that is given to controlling the population. So the award that the states get for controlling the population, its weight has been reduced to 10% only because of the fear of the aging population before we achieve the growth that we want to achieve. The area, now on the basis of the area, the larger the area of your state is, the more the benefit that you get, the more the funds you get. So its weight has been reduced to 10%. Now the forest, what is this forest about? So forest basically means the combined, see, for the forest, for this particular criteria, there are two things that is taken into account. The share of total forest area in a state out of the forest area in all states combined. So basically, let's say this is the total forest area in all the states combined. This is the total forest area of all the states combined. Out of this, the state that has the highest share of the forest area in the total forest area, so that state will get more funds. Okay, so the share of forest area, if a state has higher share of forest area of the state in the forest area of all states, this particular state that is having highest forest area, the state that is having higher forest area will get more funds. Okay, as well as the second criteria is that the growth in the forest area. From 2015 to 2023 time period, the growth in the forest area. So basically 80-20%, this rule is followed. Out of the total forest area in all the states combined, the state share is seen. A particular state's share is seen. So for Kerala, let's say the share is more. For Uttarakhand also the share is more for the forest area. In Himachal also, let's say the forest area coverage is more. So the states that have higher forest area will get higher benefit, higher awards. Other than this, there is another parameter that is taken into account in the forest, that is the growth of the forest. Let's say there is sudden growth that we have seen in the forest area in Uttarakhand. So because of the higher growth in the forest area from 2015 to 2023, then this is also one parameter. So 80% of allocation in the forest category, 80% of allocation happens on the basis of the share that the state has in the forest area out of the total forest area in all the states. And 20% of the allocation happens on the basis of the growth that has happened in the forest area in this time period. I hope this is clear that the forest, this criteria, this is the combination of the share of the forest area of the state in the total forest area of all states and the share of the increase in forest area in this time period. Okay, 80% of the weight is given to the share of the forest area in a state, while 20% of weight is given to the growth in the forest area. Any confusion? So now 16th Finance Commission has recommended grants. Coming to the grants. So now we have discussed, okay, per capita GSDP, okay, this we have discussed. Now coming to the contribution to GDP. So contribution to GDP is a new criteria that has been introduced by the 16th Finance Commission. So this becomes very, very important that the 16th Finance Commission has removed the tax and fiscal efforts. This kind of criteria has been removed by the 16th Finance Commission. No allocation, no weight has been given to the tax and fiscal effort by the 16th Finance Commission. Contribution to GDP. Now contribution to GDP. This has been introduced newly. Okay, this has basically replaced the tax and fiscal efforts criteria that was previously adopted. So previous criteria, that is tax and fiscal efforts, this has been removed, and there is the new criteria of contribution to GDP. Okay, so contribution to GDP, that is 10%. This is the 10% is the contribution to GDP. So contribution to GDP is a new criteria introduced in the recognition of India's growth ambition. So the state's contribution to GDP is defined by the share of its GSDP in all states GSDP. So basically this is the total state's GSDP, gross state domestic product. Out of that, the state that has higher share in the total state's GSDP will get the higher allocation. So the contribution to GSDP has 10% of the weight in the criterias, and the higher the contribution the state has in the GDP, the higher the contribution that the state has in the gross state domestic product, the higher the award that will be given to the state, the higher the allocation that will be given to the state under this criteria. Okay, so the contribution to GDP serves as a surrogate for efficiency based criteria. Like if a state is having higher share, in the GSDP, that means the state has taken more efforts and has increased the production in its state and such. So the state has taken more tax effort, fiscal discipline and such. So this is the basic idea. Okay, so these are the parameters on which horizontal devolution depends upon. Population, the higher the population, the better the award. Demographic performance, the more control in the population, the better the award. Area, the higher the area, the better the award. Forest, the higher the forest area and the growth in the forest area, higher the award. Per capita GSDP distance, the poorer the state is or the lesser the per capita GSDP is, the higher the award. Contribution to GDP, more contribution to GDP, more award. So this is the idea, and these are the percentages that you have to keep in mind. Okay, now coming to the grants, again very important, all this data is very important. The 16th Finance Commission has recommended grants worth 9.47 lakh crore over the 5-year period. Okay, so the 16th Finance Commission has recommended the grants worth rupees 9.47 lakh crore over the 5-year period. So basically the 16th Finance Commission has said that the central government has to provide 9.47 lakh crore worth of grants to the state government in the period of 5 years, that is from till 2031, from 2026-27, and the recommendations that is provided by the 16th Finance Commission is for the period of 2026-27 to 2030-2031. Okay, so 16th Finance Commission has provided the recommendation for this time period, and in this 5 years time period, the central government has to provide 9.47 lakh crores to the state government. This is the recommendation. Now these comprise grant for urban and rural bodies. So basically for urban and rural bodies, the grants have to be provided, and for disaster management. So central government for the period of 2026 or in the period of 2026-27 to 2030-2031, in this time period, in this 5 years, the central government has to provide the grants worth 9.47 lakh crore to the state government. Okay, so central government has to provide grants to the state government worth 9.7 lakh crore over this 5-year time period. Now the grants that will be provided by the central government to the state government should be for the urban and rural local bodies. So for the urban and rural local bodies and for disaster management, these grants should be provided. Now the 16th Finance Commission has discontinued the following grants that were being recommended by the 15th Finance Commission. So revenue deficit grants, that means if a state government has higher revenue deficit, where the revenue expenditure of the state government was more than the revenue receipts. So let's say revenue receipt of the state government is 100, revenue expenditure is 150 crores, so revenue deficit is 50 crores. So the higher the state government's revenue deficit is, the higher the state government is spending on its revenue expenditure, the regular expenditure of the state government, more than its revenue receipts, more than its tax revenue receipts and such. So the higher the state government's revenue deficit is, the more the grants were provided to the state so that the state can cover its revenue deficit. This is contradictory, you can understand, because the state governments, they will do higher revenue expenditure. That should not be done, because the revenue expenditure is just the regular expenditure that the state governments, that the central government has to control. Okay, so this was kind of promoting the higher revenue deficit, which is not good for the country. So 16th Finance Commission has removed this revenue deficit grants. So this will not be provided. Sector specific grants, state specific grants will not be provided now. These have been discontinued by the 16th Finance Commission. 16th Finance Commission has said that the grants will only be provided for the rural and urban local bodies and for the disaster management. Okay, and this is the total grants that has been recommended by the 16th Finance Commission for the period of 5 years. Now, coming to like the local governments, that is the rural local bodies and the urban local bodies, will get the total of 7,91,493 crores. Okay, so grant in aid for 2026 to 31, that is for 2026, 27 till 2030, 31. So the total grants that will be given to the local governments, as I have told you, that the grants from the central government will be given to the state government. So grants from the central government will be given to the state government 9.47 lakh crore. Okay, 9.47 lakh crore. Out of this, local governments will get 7.91 lakh crore. So the local governments will get 7.91 lakh crore and the disaster management will get 1.55 lakh crore. The disaster management will get this much. From the local bodies totality of 7.91 lakh crore, the rural local bodies will get 4.35 lakh crore and urban local bodies will get 3.56 lakh crore. That means 60% of the funds from the local government's perspective, from the local government's totality funds, 60% are going to the rural local bodies and 40% is going to the urban local body. Okay, so this is the idea. So out of the total grants of 9.47 lakh crore, that is divided amongst the local governments and the disaster management. So these grants from the central government to the state government will be for local government and for the disaster management. For local government, 7.91 lakh crore are located for the 5-year time period, and for the disaster management 1.55 lakh crore is allocated for this time period. Now these are the grants that will go from central government to state government. Now in the local government, there is the rural local body and there are the urban local bodies. Rural local bodies will get 60% of the grants, urban local body will get 40% of the grants allocated to the local governments. From this local government's grant, 60% will go to rural local bodies and 40% are going to the urban local bodies. Now out of that amount, 56,100 crore is allocated for spatial infrastructure component and 10,000 is allocated for urbanization premium. Okay, so the amount is allocated out of the local government's grants that are recommended. 60% is for the rural bodies and 40% is for the urban local bodies. Okay, now these grants, like this rural local body grant, 80% will go for the basic grant and 20% will go for performance grant. Out of the urban local bodies grant, 80% will go for the basic grant and 20% will go for the performance grant. All of these, what are these? Basic grant, performance grant, spatial infrastructure component and such, that we will discuss. Okay, so all local body grants will be made available. All the local body grants will be made available if 3 criteria are being fulfilled. Okay, so these local body grants will only be given to the state governments when there are 3 conditions that are followed. First of all, constitution of the local bodies as per the constitution, publication of the provisional and audited accounts of the local bodies, that is online availability should happen. The audited accounts and the provisional accounts has to be provided online. So online availability in public domain in year T of audited accounts. So in the current year, there should be the online availability. In the current year, let's say in 26-27 financial year, in the current financial year, there should be audited accounts for all urban local bodies and rural local bodies. Okay, for the previous 2 audited accounts there should be, for previous 1 year provisional accounts there should be. So this is the idea that the grants will only be provided for the local governments once there are 3 criteria that are fulfilled. Okay, one is the constitution of the local bodies. The rural local bodies and the urban local bodies should be constituted as per the constitution. There should be publication of provisional and audited accounts of the local bodies in the public domain. That means for the rural local bodies and for the urban local bodies, there should be, in the current year, there should be past 2 years of audited accounts that should be present and past 1 year of provisional account that should be present. For urban local bodies also, past 2 years of the audited account should be present and past 1 year of provisional account should be present. at the public domain, in the public domain, so that it can be seen that, okay, this much of the money is getting allocated to the rural bodies or to the urban bodies, and this much of the money is being used for the betterment of the areas. Okay, so the grants will only be released to the state governments when these conditions are being followed. Timely constitution of the State Finance Commission is also important, because the State Finance Commission recommends that how much will be the vertical devolution from the state government to the local bodies, how much money will transfer from the state government to the local bodies, as well as what will be the grants that can be provided from the state government to the local bodies. Okay, next is basic grant. 50% of the basic grant will be untied, so the state governments can use it however they want, and 50% will be tied, that is sanitation and solid waste. So basically 50% of the basic grant will be untied, that will be given by the state government to the local bodies, and these are the 50% of the basic grant is untied, and the rest 50% will be tied to sanitation and solid waste management and or water management. So out of the basic grant, half will be untied, half will be tied to the steps taken for the sanitation and solid waste management and the water management. Performance grants are basically divided into two parts, that is the state performance grant and the local body performance grant. So these grants for local bodies are further divided into state performance grants and local body performance grants. So 50% will go to the state performance grant and 50% will go to local body performance grant. State performance grants will be made available upon meeting a minimum benchmark for transfers to the local bodies, okay, from their own resources. So when the state government transfer a minimum fund to the local bodies from their own resources, then only these state performance grants will be provided to the state governments. Local body performance grants are linked to achievement of minimum targets specified by the commission for own source revenue growth. So local body performance grants will be released only when the local bodies have attained certain minimum targets for their own source revenue growth, so that they can collect the revenue by themselves. Okay, so this is the idea. So basic grant, after the rural bodies grant, 80% has gone to the basic grant, 20% has gone to or is recommended for the performance grant. Now basic grant 50% is tied, 50% is untied. Okay, 50% is tied to the sanitation and solid waste management and or the water management. Now performance grant, it is divided into two parts equally, state performance grant and the local body performance grant. State performance grant will be released when the state from their own resources send some money to the local bodies, send a minimum transfer to the local body, then only this money will be released from the performance grant. For local body performance grant, this money will be released only when this local body performance grant will be released only when they achieve a minimum target of getting their own source of revenue. Okay, any confusion here? Similarly, urban local bodies, from the allocation to the urban local bodies, the 80% has gone for the basic grant and 20% has gone for the performance grant. Okay, 80% has gone for the basic grant and 20% has gone for the performance grant. Now from the basic grant, 50% is tied, 50% is untied. Performance grant, it is divided into two parts, that is state performance grant and local body performance grant. Any confusion, anyone? And from the urban local bodies, there is also the money that has been sent to the spatial infrastructure component and urbanization premium. So first deduct, like from the urban body, local bodies grants, deduct these component, and then you will get the basic grant and performance grant that has the combination of 80% and 20%. Okay, chalo. Now spatial infrastructure grants for selected urban local bodies. So spatial infrastructure component, it will be provided for the selected urban local bodies. This will be tied to the development of a comprehensive wastewater management system in cities with population less than 40 lakh but more than 10 lakh as per the 2011 census, limited to 2 per state. So basically spatial infrastructure component, this is for selected urban local bodies so that they can have the comprehensive wastewater management system in cities. At least 2 such should happen. There should be limit of the 2 per state. Okay, so comprehensive wastewater management system limited to 2 per state. Now these kind of wastewater management systems will be provided, or the grants will be provided for the states, for the cities that have the population less than 40 lakh but more than 10 lakh. Okay, so this is the special infrastructure grants for selected urban local bodies. This will be tied to the development of a comprehensive wastewater management system in cities with population less than 40 lakh but more than 10 lakh, limited to 2 per state. It should not be like that the cities are having 10 of the comprehensive wastewater management systems. That is not required, limited to 2 per state. So that is the idea. Now, urbanization premium grant, basically you can understand that these will be released to the states as a one-time grant for two things: merger of peri-urban villages. Peri-urban villages, they are present at the outskirts of the towns or cities. Okay, so these are the cities, these are the towns. So at the periphery or at the outskirts adjacent to the cities or towns, there are the rural areas, but they are known as peri-urban villages because they have the mix. They have the mix of the rural and the urban facilities or characteristics. Okay, so peri-urban villages, basically they are present at the outskirts of the cities or towns, and these peri-urban villages, these peri-urban villages, these are present in the outskirts of the cities or towns, and these peri-urban villages, they have the mix characteristics of urban and rural areas, but they are still not identified as the urban areas. So these are the peri-urban villages that are not identified, that are not officially formally identified as the urban area, but they have the mixed characteristics of the urban and rural areas, and they are present in the outskirts of the cities or towns. So peri-urban villages should be merged into an adjoining larger urban local body with an existing population of not less than 1 lakh. So that is the idea. Now, formulation of a rural to urban transition policy should also be made. So urbanization premium will be released to states as a one-time grant for merger or peri-urban villages into the adjoining larger urban local body with an existing population of not less than 1 lakh, and formulation of a rural to urban transition policy. Okay, so I hope you have understood peri-urban villages. Peri-urban villages, they are not formally recognized as the urban area, so they still have the rural governance structure, but they have the mixed characteristics of the urban and rural area. So it is said that these peri-urban villages, these peri-urban villages should be mixed or merged with the adjoining larger urban local body with an existing population of not less than 1 lakh. Now coming to the last one, so we have understood the local governments grants. They are divided into rural local bodies and urban local bodies by a percentage of 60-40. Then from rural local bodies, basic grant and performance grant are divided. So basic grant 80% and performance grant 20%. Basic grant 50% is tied, 50% is untied. Performance grant is divided into 2 areas: the state performance grant and the local body performance grant. Then urban local bodies, from these grants deduct the spatial infrastructure component and urbanization premium, and the rest of the urban local bodies grants are divided 80% for basic grant and 20% for the performance grant. Again 50% is tied, 50% is untied from the basic grant, and performance grant is divided into two. The performance grant is divided into two parts, that is the state performance grant and local body performance grant. Okay, so this is the idea. I hope this is clear. Now, disaster management grants. So the Commission has recommended disaster management corpus of rupees 2,04,400, like 2.04 lakh crore. So this is the idea that the Commission, so the disaster management grants, the Commission has recommended disaster management corpus of 2.04 lakh crore, 2.04 lakh crore for the state disaster relief management, for the state disaster relief fund, and for the management, state disaster management fund. Okay, so basically the Commission has recommended the total disaster management corpus of 2.4 lakh crore. Okay, so this is the disaster management corpus that is recommended by the Finance Commission. Now from this, the money will go to the state disaster relief fund and from state disaster management fund. So state disaster relief fund and state disaster management fund for the period. Now this corpus is not for 1 year for sure. This corpus is for the period of 5 years, that is from 2026-27 to 2030-2031. Okay, so for the period of 5 years, this is the corpus that is decided. This is the corpus that is decided. Now the funds meant for the states, now this is the corpus. So basically for the disaster management for the period of 5 years, 2026-27 to 2030-31. So for this time period, there is the corpus of 2.04 lakh crore that will be used for the state disaster relief fund and the state disaster management fund. So this is the idea. Okay. Now the funds meant for the state shall continue to be divided between SDRF and SDMF in the ratio of 80 to 20. That means 80% of these funds should go to the SDRF and 20% of these funds should go to the SDMF. A total of 1.63 lakh crore is recommended for SDRF and 40,880 crore is recommended for SDMF. Now you can understand that under the grants, it is said that the central government should give the grants, the disaster management grants to the state government, that is only 1.55 lakh crore. So for this time period of 5 years. So how this disaster management corpus will get the 2.04 lakh crore of the funds in this same time period? These data are not matching. 1.55 lakh crore, 2.0 lakh crore. So basically it is said that the cost sharing pattern, it's not only the central government that will be doing the contribution in the disaster management corpus. The states also have to do the contribution in the disaster management corpus. That means the total disaster management corpus for the 5 year, so disaster management corpus addition for the 5 year 2026-27 to 2030-31, the disaster management corpus will be 2.04 lakh crore, out of which 1.55 lakh crore will be provided by the central government as grants to the state government, and the rest will be the responsibility of the states. So the disaster management corpus, or for disaster management, there is a cost sharing pattern between the center and states that is recommended to be 90% from the center, 10% from the state for northeastern and Himalayan states, 75% of the cost from the states and 75% of the 75% of the cost from the center and 25% of the cost for other states. So center share in total will be 1.55 lakh crore. So this is the idea that center disaster management grants. So commission has recommended the disaster management corpus of 2.04 lakh crore for this time period of 2026 to 31, and the money, the corpus money, the disaster management corpus money will go to the state disaster relief fund and state disaster management fund for the period of this. Okay, now the funds will majorly go to the state disaster relief fund, with 80% of funds going to the disaster relief and 20% of the funds going to the management funds. Now all the money in the corpus, all the money will not be provided by the center. There will be distribution of the cost, 90% by the center, 10% by the northeastern or hilly region, 75% by the center, 25% by other states. This is the idea. Okay, a provision was made. See, this disaster management corpus of 2.04 lakh crore, this will not be provided in the disaster management corpus in 1 year. It will be provided in 5 years, right? So it is said that every year there should be a 5% increase. So let's say in the first year, out of this corpus, 50 crores is provided, or let's say let's say out of the 2.04 lakh crore, only 50,000 crores are provided in the first year. So in the second year, there should be 5% increase, or in the starting 25,000 crores were provided. So there should be 5% increase in the coming year, because this is for the 5 year, that in the 5 years, this much of the corpus has to be provided in the disaster management. Okay, so a provision was made for a 5% increase every year for annual allocation during our award period. So in total, in the 5 years, this is the amount that should be there. But every year, like when the corpus is being added, every year there should be 5% increase. Okay, so for the totality, like in the first year, let's say there is 25,000 crore. 25,000 crore that is provided in the corpus. So in the next year, 5% of increase should happen, and that much can be contributed, at least 5% of the increase. Next year, let's say 50,000 crore was provided. So next year, 5% of the increase should happen, so that the totality in the 5 years, the totality of the disaster management corpus should be this. That is the idea. Okay. Now fiscal roadmap. So the commission, the finance commission has recommended that the center should bring down its fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is the total expenditure minus total receipts, excluding borrowings or the debt receipts basically. So fiscal deficit is the total expenditure of the central government minus the total receipts of the government, excluding the borrowing. So total expenditure that the government is doing minus the total receipts of the government, excluding borrowing. So that is fiscal deficit. So that has to be brought to 3.5% of GDP by 2030-2031. Okay, so this is the target. The Commission has recommended that the center bring down fiscal deficit to 3.5% of the GDP by 2030-2031. The Commission has recommended the state's fiscal deficit continue to be capped at 3% of the respective GSDP, gross state domestic product. So for the states, the fiscal deficit should be capped at 3%. It also recommended strictly discontinuing the practice of off-budget borrowings, because the states, like many of the states, what they are doing, they are not showing all the borrowings in the budget. So that means they are not clearly showing the borrowings that the states are doing. So they are taking the liability, but they are not showing it transparently in the state budgets. So due to which the transparency is missing out, and later on the fiscal stress might come at one point and the states might be in a big trouble. So there are the off-budget borrowings that are happening. The states are providing different guarantees for the state public enterprises. The states, through the state public enterprises, are taking various loans that are not used directly in the state public enterprises. So states, by various means, they are doing the off-budget borrowings that is not shown in the state budgets to hide the borrowings that they are doing. Basically, they are not transparently showing it in the budget. So the Finance Commission strictly recommended discontinuing the practice of off-budget borrowings for the states and bringing all such borrowings onto their budget, so that clearly they can show that what borrowings, what liability the state have. The definition of fiscal deficit and debt should be expanded to uniformly include all of budget borrowing. So fiscal deficit is what? Fiscal deficit is total expenditure minus total receipts excluding borrowing. So fiscal deficit shows the borrowing requirement of the government. Now if there are off budget borrowings are happening that is not shown here, that means fiscal deficit will be shown less, because the borrowing requirement in the budget is shown less. And off budget borrowings are happening, that is hidden borrowings are happening. So that shows that, okay, fiscal deficit is healthy for the state, the borrowings are healthy for the states. Later on the stress can come, the fiscal stress can come. Okay, so there are some states that are trying to hide their borrowings. That is not correct. So fiscal deficit is equal to total expenditure minus total receipts excluding borrowing. So fiscal deficit actually shows the borrowing requirement of the government, okay. So if the off-budget borrowings are happening, the fiscal deficit will not be able to show the total borrowing requirement, as the fiscal deficit only takes into account the budget. Okay, so this is the idea. So basically the definition of fiscal deficit should be expanded so that the off-budget borrowings are also included in the fiscal deficit, so that there is transparency that's maintained. The Commission has projected the combined debt of the central and state governments to decline from 77.3% of the GDP to 73.1% of the GDP by 2030-31. So that is the idea. Now, these are certain reforms or certain changes that has been recommended. So the Finance Commission has the main task to recommend the vertical devolution, the horizontal devolution and the grants, and the Finance Commission can also provide recommendations, additional recommendations. So basically power sector reforms, this is the additional recommendation by the Finance Commission, by the 16th Finance Commission. So power sector reforms can be undertaken. So Finance Commission has recommended that the states should actively pursue privatization of electricity distribution companies. So electricity distribution companies should be privatized, but the electricity distribution companies, that is the DISCOMs, that were under the state governments, now the problem is, that were under the state governments. Now the problem is that they are under heavy debt. If the DISCOMs have to be privatized, this heavy debt has to be separated. That means the heavy debt of the DISCOM has to be separated, and the DISCOM should have a clean balance sheet, then they can be privatized. So this is the basic idea that the Finance Commission recommended, that the state should actively pursue privatization of the electricity distribution companies, because the electricity distribution companies under the states are having losses or they are having heavy debt. Okay, now to shield the private investor from debt burden after takeover of the DISCOM, so this heavy debt burden due to the states, because states were running the DISCOM and the DISCOM came under the heavy debt. So this is the problem of the states, they took the debt through the DISCOM. So this debt should not fall to the private investor, and that's why the heavy debt has to be separated from the DISCOM, and the states should focus on resolving this debt problem. So a special purpose vehicle, that is a separate special purpose vehicle, that is a subsidiary.
has to be created, and this heavy debt has to be transferred to the special purpose vehicle, and the state will focus on resolving the heavy debt. So DISCOM that was under the control of the states, they have got heavy debt. Now the Finance Commission has recommended to privatize these DISCOMs, these electricity distribution company. Now this heavy debt should not fall on the private investors, okay? Because this was the debt that was taken by the state governments. So that's why it is said that there should be separation of the heavy debt. So create a special purpose vehicle, that is a subsidiary, and transfer this heavy debt to the special purpose vehicle, and the states will be responsible to resolving this debt problem, and the DISCOMs, that is the debt free DISCOMs, will be provided to the private sector, will be privatized. So to shield the private investor from the debt burden after DISCOM takeover, a special purpose vehicle may be created to warehouse the debt, to keep the debt in this special purpose vehicle that has to be paid by the states through the special assistance scheme for capital investment. So the states get funds from the central government under the special assistance scheme for capital investment. So under this scheme, the central government is providing the loans to the state governments. So through these money, the heavy debt can be returned. So this is the idea. Now, subsidy expenditure, the Commission has recommended the states to review and rationalize their subsidy expenditure. Much of the subsidy that the state governments are giving are have untargeted beneficiaries and unconditional cash transfer. That is a huge problem on the state governments. Okay, so the Finance Commission noted that schemes providing unconditional cash transfers tend to have large untargeted beneficiaries. So this is a problematic situation. Subsidy expenditure has to be rationalized. Okay, public sector enterprise reforms. So many, like 308 inactive state public sector enterprises have to be closed, reviewed and closed. So Finance Commission recommended a review and closure of 308 inactive state public sector enterprises. That means these state public sector enterprises, they are inactive, still they have the buildings, the lands on their name that is being unutilized. So the Finance Commission recommended a review and closure of the 308 inactive state public sector enterprises. It recommended formulation of a state level public sector enterprises disinvestment policy. So slowly and slowly the disinvestment can happen on the inactive and underperforming PSCs. So that is the idea. Now these reforms, this will be discussed in more detail. This will be discussed in more detail in the descriptive answer writing session taken by Jaskran sir. I provided you the important data points, okay, and the further will be discussed in the descriptive answer writing session. So this is it. Thank you everyone. Any confusion anyone has? Now you will get the PDF of the session in the Telegram channel of EduTap, and the link for the Telegram channel is provided in the description box below. Okay, so the PDF channel, the PDF of the session will be provided to you in the Telegram channel, and the link for the Telegram channel is provided in the description box below. Any confusion anyone? Any confusion? Okay, then I hope you enjoyed the session. We will meet in the next session now. Thank you everyone. Thank you for joining. See you in the next session.